Quick note before we begin. This is AI-assisted news commentary, for information only, and not financial advice. We summarize third-party reporting, so always check the original sources. Now, let's get into it. Welcome to Ammar Talks Tech. Today is a day where the business reality of AI stops being theoretical, money is moving, jobs are disappearing, and the rules of the internet are being rewritten in real time. Here's what we're covering. Anthropic's export control saga just ended, but not cleanly. Anthropic is also facing spyware allegations from a very different angle. The Godot game engine is banning AI-generated code. Meta wants to sell you cloud compute. Microsoft is cutting thousands of jobs while spending more than ever on AI. And Cloudflare just gave AI companies a deadline that could reshape how the web works. The US government imposed and then lifted export controls on Anthropic's Claude models, all within roughly 3 weeks. Export controls on AI models are a relatively new tool, and this is one of the first public cases of a frontier model being flagged, then cleared, as a national security risk. According to Ars Technica, the Trump administration flagged Anthropic's Claude models, referred to as Fable 5 and Mythos 5, as national security risks, triggering export curbs. About 3 weeks later, the US lifted those restrictions. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick wrote to Anthropic confirming the company would, quote, no longer need a license for exports or in-country transfers of the two models. Fable 5 is now available globally, and US organizations regained access to Mythos 5 on June 26, per Ars Technica. To earn that clearance, Anthropic set up a red teaming program with external hackers, built a dedicated internal team monitoring jailbreak threats around the clock, and launched a program called Glasswing, which gives cybersecurity researchers at trusted companies access to Mythos for defensive purposes. The thing to notice here isn't that the ban was lifted, it's the sentence at the end of Lutnick's letter. According to Ars Technica, he reminded Anthropic that the US reserves the right to re-evaluate the decisions, and reimpose export curbs at any point. That's not a clean bill of health. That's a leash. Any enterprise that built workflows around these models during the 3-week blackout learned a hard lesson. Dependency on a single AI provider creates a geopolitical single point of failure. That lesson is now priced into every serious AI procurement conversation. For businesses evaluating frontier AI, regulatory risk is now a real procurement variable, not a theoretical one. The 3-week window showed exactly what downtime looks like, and companies that ignored multi-provider strategies have less excuse to do so now. Anthropic is facing a separate, murkier allegation that Claude has spyware-like code baked in to detect connections tied to China. This allegation sits on top of the export control story and points to a different concern entirely. Not government restriction, but what AI companies may be doing inside their own products. According to Crypto Briefing, a social media account called @CoinBureau highlighted allegations that Claude AI contains spyware-like code, reportedly designed to detect connections linked to China. Crypto Briefing also noted that a prediction market submarket tracking a July 1 restoration of Claude Fable 5 saw odds drop from 93.7% yes after the spyware allegations surfaced. Details here are limited and the sourcing is thin, so I want to be careful. What I'll say is this. The allegation itself, regardless of how it resolves, surfaces a real governance question. If an AI lab treats its own developer tool as an intelligence instrument, even with defensible intent, it fundamentally changes the trust calculus for enterprise users. The export control story is about governments restricting AI. This story is about whether AI labs might be doing their own form of monitoring. Those are very different problems, and both are now on the table at the same time. Details remain limited. But, if the allegation has merit, it would force a reckoning about what enterprises actually know is running inside the tools they deploy. Godot, one of the most important open-source game engines in the world, is banning AI-generated code from its project full stop. Godot powers games like Slay the Spire 2 and The Case of the Golden Idol, and its contributor community is large enough that this policy will be felt across indie game development. The Godot Foundation announced it is amending its contributor guidelines to forbid AI-authored code, pull requests submitted by AI agents, and AI-generated text in human-to-human communication, according to Hacker News, PC Gamer, and 80 Level. The policy allows AI only for, quote, menial things, like code completion, regex, and find and replace, and requires disclosure if AI is used in any pull request. Machine translations are still acceptable, provided the original text was human-authored. According to 80 Level, using autonomous AI agents or vibe coding already results in an automatic ban from the Godot GitHub repository. The move follows a February warning from Godot maintainers that AI-generated pull requests had become, in their words, increasingly draining and demoralizing for code reviewers. This is the first major open-source project I'm aware of to formalize this as explicit policy rather than informal discouragement. And the reasons matter more than the ban itself. It's not primarily about AI being bad at code, it's about provenance, reviewer burden, and liability. Open-source maintainers are volunteers. Every AI slop pull request they have to evaluate is time and energy extracted from the project, with no value returned. Godot is essentially saying, the cost of AI contributions is being paid by humans, and that's not a sustainable exchange. Other OSS projects are watching this closely. Expect Godot's policy to become a template. The open-source community is formalizing its AI governance faster than most enterprise software shops, and the liability question around AI-generated code provenance isn't going away. Meta is building a cloud infrastructure business to sell its excess AI compute, and it could make the company a serious rival to AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Meta has committed to spending nearly $183 billion on AI infrastructure, and like any company sitting on that much capacity, it's now asking how to make the hardware pay for itself. Bloomberg reported, as cited by TechCrunch and Yahoo Finance UK, that Meta is developing a cloud infrastructure business called Meta Compute, which would sell access to AI compute power and models. The effort is led by Meta's head of infrastructure Santosh Janardhan, Meta Superintelligence Labs leader Daniel Gross, and President Dina Powell McCormick. As of the end of Q1, Meta had committed to spending $182.9 billion on AI infrastructure in the coming years, including projects in Louisiana and Ohio. Meta is considering selling access to its recently launched closed-weight model Muse Spark, hosted on its own infrastructure. Mark Zuckerberg said in May that a cloud computing business is, quote, definitely on the table. The SpaceX comparison in the reporting is instructive. According to TechCrunch, SpaceX signed a deal with Anthropic to sell out all compute at its Colossus One data center, then signed similar leases with Google and Reflection AI. That's the playbook. Build massive infrastructure for your own needs, then monetize the excess. What makes Meta's version structurally different is the model layer. Selling compute is commoditized. Selling compute plus proprietary model access is a platform. If Meta bundles Muse Spark access with infrastructure, it's not just competing on price per GPU hour, it's competing on the full stack. That's a different threat to AWS and Azure than anyone has posed before. A fourth serious hyperscaler, one with its own frontier models, would meaningfully pressure cloud pricing and reshape enterprise AI procurement options. This is early, but the leadership team and the capital commitment suggest it's not hypothetical. Microsoft is cutting thousands of jobs, while spending more on AI infrastructure than ever before. Microsoft employs approximately 220,000 people globally, and this round of cuts comes as the company is in the middle of the largest AI capital investment cycle in its history. Microsoft is preparing to cut thousands of jobs affecting less than 2.5% of its global workforce, according to GeekWire and Crypto Briefing. The cuts hit sales, consulting, and the Xbox division. According to GeekWire, Microsoft is on pace to spend more than $100 billion on AI and cloud infrastructure in the fiscal year just ended, up from $88.7 billion the year prior. About one-third of approximately 750 eligible U.S. employees also took a voluntary retirement buyout, the company's first ever, according to GeekWire. The broader context: GeekWire cites outplacement firm Challenger, Gray, and Christmas reporting that U.S. tech companies have announced 653 cuts so far in 2026, up 66% from the same period of 2025. And AI was cited as the reason for 579 job cuts in May 2026 alone, the highest single month since Challenger began tracking the cause in 2023. The numbers tell the story clearly. Microsoft is not cutting because it's struggling, it's cutting because it's restructuring. When you're spending over $100 billion on AI infrastructure, you need a different cost base to make the math work. Sales headcount that made sense in a pre-AI world is redundant when AI handles more of the customer journey. The Xbox cuts are a separate conversation, but the sales and consulting reductions are a direct consequence of AI automation eating roles that Microsoft itself is selling the tools to automate. That's not irony, that's the business model. The 38,579 AI-attributed cuts in a single month is the number that should command attention. We are no longer in the phase where AI job displacement is a future risk. It's a present data point, and it's accelerating. Cloudflare just gave AI companies a September 15th deadline. Separate your training crawlers from your search crawlers or get blocked. Cloudflare sits between the internet and a massive share of the web's infrastructure, which makes its enforcement mechanisms more powerful than most legislation. Starting September 15, 2026, Cloudflare's default settings will block what it calls mixed-use crawlers from pages that host ads, according to TechCrunch and the TechBuzz. According to TechCrunch, the changes apply to new Cloudflare customers, new sites set up by existing customers, and all existing free customers. Cloudflare CEO Matthew Prince cited a recent milestone where bots surpassed human traffic online for the first time, an event not expected until next year, according to TechCrunch. Cloudflare's own data showed that over 50% of crawl traffic from AI crawlers is spent refetching unchanged pages per TechCrunch. To pair with the blocking, Cloudflare is evolving its pay-per-crawl marketplace into pay-per-use, letting publishers charge AI companies when their content actually creates value, not just when it's fetched. Initial partners include Ceramic.ai and U.com, according to TechCrunch. What makes this significant isn't the policy, it's the mechanism. Governments have been debating AI content licensing for years with limited enforcement leverage. Cloudflare doesn't need a law, it controls the infrastructure. The September 15th deadline is, functionally, a market structure event. AI companies that want access to ad-supported publisher content have to either pay or re-architect how their crawlers work. And the shift from pay-per-crawl to pay-per-use is a meaningful evolution. It prices content on value created, not bytes transferred. That's closer to how publishers actually think about their content's worth. This is the most concrete enforcement mechanism for AI content licensing that exists right now, and it arrives through infrastructure rather than legislation. Watch whether other infrastructure players follow Cloudflare's lead, because if they do, the economics of training data change fast. Every story today is about the same underlying tension. AI is generating enormous value, and almost nobody has agreed on who pays for it or who bears the cost. Microsoft pays in capital expenditure and sheds human headcount. Cloudflare is building the infrastructure to make AI companies pay publishers. Meta wants to monetize its AI investment by selling compute. Anthropic spent 3 weeks navigating what happens when a government decides it controls access to your product. And Godot's maintainers, who are volunteers, decided the cost of AI contributions was being paid entirely by humans and drew a line. The money is moving. The rules are being written right now, in real time, by infrastructure companies, open source communities, and governments, not in that order. That's the episode. The through line today is simple. AI value is real, but so is the bill, and everyone is fighting over who signs it. If that kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribe. We do this every day. Tomorrow, more signals, less noise.